in this module, we're going to look at how you import photographs into Lightroom, and it's all about how you import existing photographs. And in the next module, I'll show you how to import photographs from an SD card, but this is all about existing photographs. So if you remember from the last module, we hooked up our external hard drive to the computer and we created this main photographic folder. And then we went ahead and we created a catalog. So let's introduce our photographs then. So perhaps they live on your desktop, or perhaps they live more likely in your pictures folder. So I'm going to show you two scenarios, one where they're on your desktop and one where they are living in your pictures folder. And quite simply, we are going to move them across. Now there's two ways to import photographs. One is to locate them and to follow a route into a path, I should say, into the import dialog box. The other way is just to simply drag and drop, which you might find really useful. And I use both, but I'm going to show you both types, both ways of importing, either drag and drop or by locating them in your Finder and doing it that way in Lightroom's Finder, I should say. So let's take a little look then. So before I show you how to import photographs, let me show you where my photographs are stored, and you might have a similar situation. So if I locate my Finder or Windows Explorer if you're using a PC, and I can see in my pictures folder I have two folders, one called Newton's Cradle and one called Robots. Ignore this one because in your pictures folder you might have a Lightroom Catalog, the default one that Lightroom creates for you. So I put that there deliberately just in case you see that in your pictures folder. Just ignore that. So we have two folders containing photographs, and this one's full of lovely robots. That's where they live, and you might have the same in your pictures folder. Not the same robot shots obviously, but your pictures, your photographs. Now on the desktop I have another folder, and this one's called Mannequin, and if I double click on that I can see that has 3 photographs of a bust. Now I've called it Mannequin deliberately because I need to change the name to Bust, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So that is living on my desktop. And just a quick word as well, my folders have been named, and that's just because that's what I do. Your photographs perhaps are in folders that just have a date, because if you've imported them already into your pictures folder, it quite often just defaults at a date. And so your folder just might have a date on it. So let's go back to Lightroom then, and we'll start the import. I'm going to show you 2 ways of importing your photographs and the various options that you have as well. So the 2 ways basically is to use this import button here located in this bottom left hand corner, or locate your photographs and drag and drop them. So I'm going to show you both methods. They both work, to be fair, exactly the same. It's just about how you locate your photographs. That's the only difference. So let's make a start then, and I'm going to click on this import button. And when I do, this little window appears. Now that's much too small. I can't see any of the photographs. And you might have the same little window that pops up. And if that happens, just click on this little triangle here, and that will make the window bigger. Now you can see what's happening. So let's take a look then. On this side, in this left-hand panel, this is where your source images are. So you need to locate where your source images are. And I'll show you that in a second. And then basically you follow the arrow across, and we have 4 options of how we're going to add those photographs to the catalogue. And then moving across to the right-hand side is the destination side. And this is where we decide where the photographs are going to live. And I'll take you right through all of that when we get to this side. Let's start on this left-hand side, and I need to locate where the photographs are. So I know those photographs, those robot photographs, are on my Macintosh hard drive, and they're in the pictures folder. So if I just open that, I can follow the path, users Frank Minghella, pictures folder, and there is the robot folder. So if I click on there, all those robot photographs will appear. And currently, all of them would be imported. And how do I know that? Because they have this little checkbox in the left-hand corner of each image. And if it's got a little check in it, it means it's going to be imported. And I can quite simply decide which images I want to bring across just by checking that box. I'll go through this in a bit more detail in the next module because I'm conscious of the fact that I don't want to tell you the same thing twice. That said, I probably will end up telling you the same thing twice, but hey, that's okay, isn't it? So we've located our photographs, we follow the arrow, and the next thing we come to are these 4 options. So let's start with this first one then. Add photos to the catalogue without moving them. Now, if you choose to add, what's going to happen is the photographs will stay where they are and they will be added to the catalogue, but they will always live, in this case, in my pictures folder. And you don't want that because you want to move them really. So this is the one I wouldn't use because it's going to get really, really messy. So we don't want to do that. Next one then is move. And it says here, move photos to a new location and add them to the catalogue. Move's really good because Lightroom really will move your photographs across into the main photographic folder, and it will leave behind the empty folder where those photographs used to be, and you can just delete that folder. And that is probably the most popular way of doing it. The next option you have is copy. Copy is going to do exactly that. It's going to copy those robot photographs into the main photographic folder on my external drive. And what that will do is it will leave the photographs here, and as I said earlier, it will make a copy. So then you'll have the photographs still living in your pictures folder, but they will also be in this main photographic folder, so you'll have a duplicate. And it's not the way to do it, I don't think. I suppose you've got a backup, but I wouldn't do it that way. The whole idea is to clean up your drive, clean up your computer, and store your photographs elsewhere on this external drive. So the copy is not something I would suggest you use. However, the next one, copy as DNG, is a good option. Now when you copy as DNG, what Lightroom will do is it will do exactly the same thing. It will copy all those photographs, in this case from my pictures folder, all those robot pictures, it will copy them into the main photographic folder and it will create new DNG files. So as they're being copied into the main photographic folder, they're being converted at the same time to DNG. So that's quite good because DNG just stands for digital negative. And all it is really, if you look on all these photographs, they all have a file extension ARW, and that's a Sony RAW file. Right, it's RAW spelled differently, isn't it? I've just realised. But every camera manufacturer has their own file extension for a RAW photograph. Now with a JPEG, it's different. .jpeg is a universal file format that all camera manufacturers use. But unfortunately, they all use different file extensions for the RAW shots. So that is why Adobe come up with this universal file format. You don't have to do it. It doesn't really matter, but it's kind of, why not? You know, it's the way forward, I would imagine. So it's worth doing. The only thing about that is it will leave behind all these robot photographs in the pictures folder, the originals, and I would have to go in then and delete them. So that's the other thing. Just a point here, if we did go back and jump back to this one, if we did move them and they all would be moved from the pictures folder into this main photographic folder, but they wouldn't be moved as DNGs, that's okay, because once they're inside Lightroom, we can then convert them to DNG. So we can do it that way as well. So let's try this way first, then copy as DNG and follow the arrow across then. So we have our destination, and there are 4 options here, 4 little windows, and I'm going to start at the bottom because I want to show you the destination first. We need those to go to the Extreme SSD, in my case anyway, because that's my external drive. And if I just open that up, I want to put them in this Lightroom bite size photographs folder that I created earlier, and that's where I want them to live. So I've located the destination. Now I'm going to jump backwards and then I'm going to come back to that window in a second. If we go to file handling, again, I'll go through this in more detail in the next module. Just to give you a heads up, standard preview and don't import suspected duplicates. That's all you need to know there, but I will explain more in the next module. But by all means, if you're importing photographs as you're watching this tutorial, you're doing well if you're doing that. But if you are doing that, then select these two options. That's all you need to know, honestly. It's as simple as that. File renaming is important, or is it? It's only important if it's important to you. Now, I do rename my photographs when I bring them in. Now, again, in the next module, I'll go into that in more detail, but I am just going to type in here robots. And again, in the next module, you'll learn more about that. But my image is now going to be renamed as 2020 August 30th robots and ascending from 001. So they, instead of having these random numbers that you can see underneath each image, they will now be renamed. Does it matter? Not really, but you can choose to rename or not, and you've got loads of options, which again you'll discover in the next module. Next one then, apply during import. Now you can apply develop settings, and honestly, look at all them. Why you would do that, I don't know. I kind of do know, but I honestly, at this stage, to be putting presets on your photographs when you haven't even imported them, it's just something I wouldn't do, and most people don't do that. They just import the photographs, and then obviously you do that lovely editing process in the develop module. So I don't do that. I think this option is for, I'll give you an example. If you were a sports photographer and you needed to get your photographs of that sporting event across to the newspaper as soon as the final whistle goes in that particular sporting event, and you've got a specific set of presets that you apply to all your sports shots, that might be an option. That isn't me, so I don't do that. The other thing is metadata, and yeah, you can jump in and fill all this in if you feel you need to. And again, when you watch the next module, I'll go into that in more detail. You can basically attach your copyright information to each photograph if you feel you need to. This next one though, keywords, that's quite good. And I'm going to keyword this set of photographs with the keyword robots. Now, there's a whole module on keywords. And again, in the next module, which is about import from an SD card, I will go into that in a bit more detail as well. But just for quickness, I've inserted the keyword robots. And then eventually back to this little window here, the destination window. And this is important. This is really, really important. I've located where I want the photographs to be on my external SSD drive. I've located the Lightroom bite size photographs folder, and I have a couple of options here now. I can choose these three options: by original folder, by date, or into one folder. And in this case, I'm going to select by original folder. Now, when I do that, if we look down here, Extreme SSD, Lightroom bite-size photographs, oh, and there's a new folder about to be created called robots. Now it's doing that because I previously gave this folder a name, if you remember rightly. So if I go into my Finder, I previously named this folder robots. And so what it's doing, Lightroom is doing, is adopting the same folder name. Now, of course, you might not have given your folders names. So this is where you have the option to do something completely different. So I'm going to select this one instead, into one folder. And then I'm going to click into this little box here, into subfolder. And I'm going to call this I'm going to call this More Robots. Now I've done that deliberately. Now I could have called it Robots obviously, but I've called it More Robots so you can see the distinction now. If you look now, Extreme SSD, Lightroom bite-sized photographs, there's now going to be a new folder created called More Robots. So all I've basically showed you there is that you need to create folders. Originally all these robots were in a folder called Robots anyway, so that I could have just selected that option, couldn't I, by original folder because it was already named. But if you haven't named your folders, and I don't always name my folders, then I've got the option to do it here into one folder, into a subfolder, and then name it. In the import from SD module, import from an SD card module coming up, you will see that in more detail. But that's just to show you how that part works. So let's retrace our steps then before I click on the import button. I've started on this side, which is the source panel, and I've located where the photographs are, and then I've followed this arrow across, and I've chosen to select copy as DNG, which means all these photographs will be converted to DNG. So following the arrow, they're going to be copied to the Extreme SSD drive. I've gone ahead and taken a look in these folders and eventually ended up at the destination, and it's Extreme SSD, Lightroom bite-sized photographs, and I'm creating a new folder called More Robots, and you can see the new folder here. And all I simply need to do is hit the import button, and lo and behold, the magic starts. And in this top right hand corner we can see the progress bar, and there you go, Lightroom is now converting those images to DNG files. And it will also create a standard, let's just click on OK here, and it will also create standard previews. And they are now in, ready to be edited. So let me show you a few things then. If I go back to my Finder window, the robot file, this is in my pictures folder, the robot folder has these images, they are still there. Now I can choose to delete that folder, and I probably would. I would just drag that to the waste paper bin because I've just copied them. But I guess really I need to show you that I have copied them. So here's another window, Extreme SSD, Lightroom bite-sized photographs. If I click on that, there is the folder I've just created, More Robots. And if I click on that, you can see they've been renamed with the date and ascending numbers up to 18 in this case, and they all have the new file extension .dng. So as you can see, I could, because these are living in the pictures folder, I could delete this folder. I'm not going to, but I could delete that. I should delete it really, but I'm going to leave it there for the time being. I could delete that folder because they've all been copied across into the catalog, and that's the way that works. So if I'm just going to collapse that window down there, and let's look at how we import some more then. I'm just going to click in here. So before we move on though, if I jump over here, we're still in the library module. If I jump over here and locate the Extreme SSD external drive, you can see I have now created this More Robots folder, and it has 19 photographs inside it. That's pretty cool, that, isn't it? So let's import some more photographs then. Now I'm going to open my Finder, and if you haven't got a Mac, I would imagine it's Windows Explorer, isn't it? And I'm going to select this other folder here. Now it's located again in my Pictures folder, and this folder is called Newton's Cradle. And I'm going to use the drag and drop method. So previously we located it over here in the source panel, but here in this little example I'm going to show you the drag and drop. So I've located the photographs in my Finder or Windows Explorer, and I'm just going to drag it into the center of the screen, and I'm just going to drop it anywhere. As long as it's in the center portion, I can just drop it. And lo and behold, the import box appears. And all I've really done is bypassed this left-hand panel. Rather than going looking for the photographs, I've chose to find them in the Finder or the Explorer first. it doesn't matter. It's exactly the same thing really, but I just thought I'd show you how you can do it that way. So let's follow our path again then. I don't have to bother with this part now because they're already here. And again, I can choose to include or not include various photographs. I won't bother with that though. And in this case, I'm going to click on move instead. So I'm just going to move them and you'll see them disappear from that pictures folder. So across again, now because I've previously done this, it's more or less set up, extreme SSD, and unfortunately, right, this is a good little example to show you. So in the destination little panel here, I'm about to import all those photographs into a subfolder called More Robots. Now I don't want to do that, do I? I had already named this folder Newton's Cradle. So if I just click, well, before I do, let's just have a look here. We've got our More Robots folder and obviously our catalog folder. So just bear in mind, we only got 2 folders there, but watch, if I change this back to original folders, look what's happened. It is indeed going to bring in that folder called Newton's Cradle, but it's going to put it inside the More Robots folder. And that's because I've still got this little box checked here. So I'm just going to uncheck that. And there you go. It's in its own folder now. It was about to be a folder called Newton's Cradle, and it was about to be a subfolder inside the More Robots folder, and that's because I had that little box checked there. So as you can see, by original folders, because I had named it Newton's Cradle, I can do that. Now obviously, if I hadn't named it, this is where I can put into subfolder, into one folder, and then I could rename it. So I'm going to do that so you can see both ways of doing it basically. And I've called it Newton's Cradle 2, and there you can see new folder called Newton's Cradle 2. So you saw both ways of doing it there. If you have named your folder, then great, just bring it in as original folder. If you haven't named your folder, well then select this option, into one folder, check this little box and then give it a name and it will create the folder. It's as simple as that. So all these other little panels here, file handling, once you've set that to standard and don't import suspected duplicates, then you never have to do that again. File rename and, oh, right, they're called robots. We don't want that. I'm just going to call that Newton and apply during import. I could put a keyword there. You get the idea. I'm not going to do that, but you could put a keyword and then the destination. We've just been through that. So just simply click on the import button and again the magic will happen. And again at the top here, look, there's 2, you can see that 2 operations in progress. What's happening there is it's imported the photographs and deleted them from the pictures folder. So we're going to take a look at that in a second. Now the way I've done that, these photographs are not now digital negatives. They've come across as raw files. And I'm going to come back to that in a second and show you how I can change them to digital negatives. But first of all, let me open the Finder again. And there's my pictures folder. There's the Newton's Cradle folder. And look, it's empty. If I clicked on the robots folder, because we copied them across, they are still in that robots folder in the pictures folder. However, I chose to move these Newton's Cradle photographs to the main photographic folder, and in doing that Lightroom has deleted them from the pictures folder, and that is pretty good, isn't it? So let's open up another Finder window and we can see that now on my external drive, Extreme SSD, there's my Lightroom bite size photographs folder, and it now has 2 folders in it. Well, it's got 3. It's got 2 photographic folders. We've got More Robots and Newton's Cradle 2. And as you can see, the More Robots folder, all these robot photographs are all DNGs. But however, the Newton's Cradle photographs, they came across as raw files because I didn't select the copy as DNG. So we can actually change these photographs now, however. So they're in the library, and all I need to do is select all the photographs. I could just press Command or Control A. So now all those photographs are selected, and I can go up to the library, drop down, and just select Convert Photographs to DNG, and just hit OK. And all those photographs, all 21 of them, will now be converted to digital negatives. So if that's your thing and you want to go forward into the 21st century and beyond with this new file extension .dng, then that's how you do it. So I've moved those photographs from the pictures folder into the main photographic folder on my external drive in their own little folder, and I'm now converting them to digital negatives. And Lightroom has deleted them from my pictures folder, which is pretty cool, isn't it? Let's take a look at what's happened there then. If I open the Finder window up, we can see, right, Extreme SSD, Lightroom bite-sized photographs, Newton's Cradle 2. So these are the Newton's Cradle shots that I imported previously. And as you know, I've just converted them to .dng, and Lightroom's done that for me. That's fantastic, isn't it? Now, jumping back to the library module in Lightroom, if I just expand this little window here, you can see we've now got two folders. We've got more robots, and we've got Newton's Cradle 2, and I can jump between the two. There's the robots, and there's the Newton's Cradle 2. So we're starting to populate our catalogue with photographs. That's really good, isn't it? So we have on the desktop our mannequins, and what should we do with them? Well, that is a good question. I can either choose to drag or drop, or I can use this method of locating them. And I think I'm going to use this method just so because I think the drag and drop one's obvious, isn't it? So is this one really, but anyway, let's do that. So let's hit the import button and we'll locate where those photographs are. So they're not in my pictures folder. They are on the desktop. So click on desktop, expand that, and there they are, they're mannequins. And there's three of them. Now, again, following the route, we've located, this is the source part, isn't it? And I've located where they are, follow the arrow, and again, I've got my four options. Which should I choose? Well, I am going to choose, I kind of like this move. I'm going to choose move. And the reason I'm going to choose move is I've got a feeling that a lot of your photographs may be JPEGs, and this copy is DNG. Just to let you know, you can't convert a JPEG to a digital negative. It's only for raw photographs. So I'm going to use this move option here. But again, as you know, you've got three options. Don't use this add. That's no good. You've got these three options. Across here, file handling is going to be the same once you've set that up. I know I've said that a number of times. It's already done. File renaming, well, it's called mannequin, but it's actually a bust, isn't it? So I'm going to say bust. Apply during import, nothing. I could put keywords on. Again, you'll find out that all about that in the next module. Destination, well, we know all about that too, or do we? Let's just go through it again. Now I could choose by original folder, and as you can see, oh look, the same problem. It's going to go into the Newton's Cradle, but that's because I've got this little box checked here, right? So it's going to go into its own folder called mannequin. But as you know, it's not really a mannequin, is it? It's a bust. So I'm going to change this to into one folder, into a subfolder, and I'm going to call that bust. And there you go. Lightroom has created a new folder all ready for the import. And I'm just going to simply click on import. I'll tell you what though, I'm not going to import this photograph. So I'm only importing two. It's just to give you an idea how you can switch things on and off. And then I'll just click import and it will bring those two photographs across. And if I look now in the mannequin folder on the desktop, it's got one photograph left in it. And it's got one photograph left in it because I only chose to bring across two photographs. But the other two have disappeared, and that's because I selected the move option. So that's pretty good, isn't it? Now, let me import that final photograph then. and let me do it by the drag and drop method instead. So there's one left, and I'm just going to import that one too. Drag it into the center, and the import dialog box appears, one photograph. I want it to live in this folder, but I don't want it to be in a subfolder. I just want it to be in the folder. So I just uncheck that box there, and it will bring that one photograph that I left on the desktop. It's going to bring it into Extreme SSD Lightroom bite-size photographs in the previous folder we created called Bust. Now, the reason I'm showing you that is because you might have a folder here eventually that might say family trips abroad, and every family trip abroad you want to put in that one folder, and that's how you can do it. I can choose to put that bust photograph inside the inside the More Robots folder if I want. I could choose to put it there, but it makes sense to put it into the bust folder because that's what it is. And then I'm just going to click on import, and that will bring that in. Now in the library module, I can only see one photograph, but I know there's 3 images of the bust, but what it's showing me is the previous import. If I just click on bust, then all 3 will appear. So it's all pretty easy, isn't it? Now these are raw files, so I could select all 3, and as you know, just convert them to DNGs and just say yes. So they will then be converted to DNG. Now just to tidy up, what I can do is this folder will now be empty, which it is because we've moved them, and I could just put them into the bin. So that folder's in the bin. And then let me just open the Finder. Let's go back to my pictures folder. Now to do that, just bear with me. I have to go to my computer and then do all of that to get to my pictures folder. And I have the Newton's Cradle folder, which is empty because we moved them. So I'm going to put that into the bin. I don't need it. And we've got the robots folder. Now remember, I copied them across as DNGs. So what Lightroom did was keep the original raw files in the pictures folder. And I don't want them now because they are safely across into the new main photographic folder on the external drive. So now I've got nothing in the pictures folder because they're all living inside Lightroom. And if I just take a final look in the Extreme SSD external drive, I've got Lightroom bite-size photographs, click on, and I've got the bust folder with the 3 images, digital negative. I've got More Robots, and I've got Newton's Cradle. And no photographs now are living in my pictures folder. They are all safely stored on this external hard drive. And that's how easy it is to import existing photographs. And there's a number of ways of doing it, and I've showed you to the best of my ability all the different options that you have. Now to import from an SD card, it's pretty similar, and in the next module I'll show you that, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as well. And I say because I was conscious of telling you the same thing twice, but it's pretty easy, isn't it? And I'm quite excited now. I've got my catalogue is growing, and again, once we get all our photographs in and we learn a bit more about the basics, we can get through to that sexy editing part. So there you have it then, how to import existing photographs that are living in your pictures folder or on your desktop or wherever they may be into the Lightroom Catalog system. And it's easy, isn't it? Just follow the route around the import dialog box. Now I do know that video was rather long, but it was important because it's one of the big things that people get confused about. And as I say, if you don't set Lightroom up correctly from the start, that's when you'll encounter problems. Now the next video is all about how you import photographs from an SD card. So I will see you in the next module.